In the Secret Tantra, the Buddha has said the root of all trainings is ethics. Therefore, maintain your ethics at the cost, even at the cost of your life. So here we have reference to the three types of trainings: the training of ethics, the training of concentration, and training of wisdom. And in the order that these are presented, we see that the training in ethics or morality is the first. The reason for that is because morality is the foundation of all other trainings. The Buddha has given extensive teachings on the vehicles and the training of the hearers and all other vehicles. And for all of them, always the Buddha emphasized that morality is the foundation. So here, whether we talk about the morality of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions or the morality of keeping our vows properly, this is to be understood as the fundamental. Also, we know that ethics is very important in order to be able to properly develop concentration and further wisdom. So, for example, unless we are able to stop negative activities, stop and control negative activities of our body and our speech, we will not be able, it's impossible to develop single-pointed concentration on our chosen focal object. So imagine that you engage in activities such as killing or stealing or sexual misconduct, or that you always use harsh speech against others, and then try to sit down and develop single-pointed concentration. It simply will not happen. Therefore, it is very important that we try to safeguard and maintain our ethics as purely as possible. And similarly, if we maintain the ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous activities, it becomes much easier for us to develop concentration during our meditation and focus single-pointedly on our focal object. And then, on the basis of this concentration, it will be easier to perform analysis. Wisdom is developed through the process of analysis. So we can see that it makes a great difference whether we keep or not our ethics, our morality, in terms of how well we will develop concentration and wisdom. So when we use the term ethics, right, ethics is not something that we should consider to be strictly limited, understood within the context of Dharma or religious practice. Ethics applies to all type of everyday activities. Actually, the term that we translate as ethics means engage in a proper way, according to the degree, according to the law. So engage in the activity in a lawful, proper manner. And you can see, for example, that when we go to a restaurant and order food, we maintain ethics, so we behave properly, because once we order the food and we eat the food, at the end we have to pay the bill. So paying the bill is maintaining the proper order or the proper behavior that is expected when we go to a restaurant. Similarly, when we board, let's say, a bus, we pay the fare and things like that. We perform various activities, not religious activities, everyday activities, in the proper way. Okay, so also in terms of concentration and wisdom, of course, we understand those within a strictly religious concept, but also they can be applied more generally. So the whole idea of ethics, it means that we keep a rule, we abide by a particular rule, and this is our choice. This is something that we do from our own side. So, for example, every day there are, actually, unfortunately, there is the opportunity to engage in many negative activities. So it is up to us to make the decision with every activity. Let's say the thought arises that says, I want to harm this person. And although the thought arises, as soon the thought arises, we should have that sense of control that says, oh no way, I shouldn't be doing this. This is a negative activity. I will certainly not do this. And by doing this, by immediately stopping any further action on this thought, this is maintaining ethics. So it's important to recognize that all the excellent conditions that we have in this life, such as, for example, having a body that is fully able with all our senses, all our faculties, all our arms and legs and so forth working properly, having clear intelligence, sharp intelligence, and so forth. All of these are the result of virtue that we established in a previous life. So as Master Chandrakirti has said, practicing ethics in the previous life is what establishes the favorable result of the human rebirth. If you do not practice ethics, even if you practice generosity and so forth, so even if you practice generosity, if you practice patience and so forth, the result will be a rebirth in the lower migrations, as a hell, as an animal, and so forth. And the example that we often give in this case is the example of nagas, because nagas are in the animal realm, although they have access to great resources. So they are very rich, they're very well endowed in terms of resources because they have practiced generosity in their previous life. However, they didn't practice ethics properly, and this is why they ended up with this type of rebirth. Yeah. So if we can give a more modern example, all those dogs that come as pets in rich families in Singapore, they must have practiced great generosity in their previous lives. Yes, they're really pampered as pets, but they have an animal rebirth. So as you can see here, we have different explanations about how we end up with a good result of a good human rebirth. We have the explanation according to Buddhist Dharma that very clearly says that having obtained a good human body is the result of having practiced ethics, morality properly in our previous lives. Then we have other explanation that comes from other systems. So the religious systems that accept that there is a God creator, they actually say that God created this human or that that living being and that living being. But of course, this raises the question. Let's say that a family has 3 children. They are born from the same biological parents. They grow in the same environment. They are conceived in the same womb, and so on and so forth. However, we see that there are great differences between the 3 children. If they are created from the same God, the question arises, why are they not the same or more similar, much more similar? And finally, we have scientific explanation that goes down to the DNA and the genes and so forth. However, if we look at the Buddhist presentation, we say that 100% the result of a good human body, a good human rebirth, 100% is the result of pure morality in the previous life. Yeah. So it's very interesting to actually examine the differences in biological children, even among twins, right? Because we notice that they are not the same. There are always differences. Difference in the way they talk, differences in the way they walk, differences in the way they think and they act. There are always differences. Now, we have this very important saying in Tibetan that says, if you want to know what you did in your previous life, look at the state of your current body. Why? Because the result of the current body has come from the activities of your previous lives. And if you want to know what you will be like in your future lives, look at the current state of your mind, because the current state of your physical, your verbal, your mental activities is what will determine your future rebirth. So that is very important. So as we can see here, in terms of the 3 trainings, for beginners, the most important to engage is the training in ethics. Once you establish this well, once you train well in this, then the other 2 will follow. Training in concentration, training in wisdom. These things will develop naturally based on the training of ethics. And eventually we will be able to generate the wisdom realizing emptiness that can influence all of our activities. In this context, in terms of ethics, the training of ethics, we are discussing how to stop the 18 root downfalls and the 46 secondary misdeeds in relation to our Bodhisattva vows. And all of those activities are very important, not just within our Dharma practice, but as you can see, behaving in a proper way in society with the right motivation actually becomes the training of ethics. And even within the family, if you make the effort to maintain harmony and good relationships, that becomes the training of ethics. So please consider those things in terms of everyday activities in the family, in society, and so forth. So in this presentation of that we have here of the Bodhisattva vows, we said that the safeguarding against the 18 root downfalls is the morality of stopping negative activity. And this is the real ethics, the real morality. Following that, we have 34 out of the 46 negative activities, which constitute the ethics of gathering virtuous activities. And we see that those are presented in relation to the practice of the 6 perfections. Although those are designated as the ethics of gathering virtuous activity, they're only nominally ethics. The real ethics is safeguarding against the 18 root downfalls. And then finally, we have the last group of 12 that again are designated as ethics. They are the ethics of benefiting sentient beings. They are presented as misdeeds because according to if certain activities are carried out with a specific type of motivations, we end up not helping others, not benefiting others. So there is something that is stopping us from benefiting others, and we have to avoid that situation. From this last group of 12, last week we presented the first one, the 35th. So now we continue with the 36th, which is of failing to serve the sick. Our commentary says here, out of anger or laziness, failing to offer service or help those who are sick and deserve our service and help. So this is actually one of the very important activities here, because those who are sick actually usually need our support. And they need our support in terms of providing food or drinks or medicine for them or assisting them. And that also involves financial assistance if we have the means to do that. So if we fail to offer this type of help and service to those who are sick and needy, out of anger, because we're thinking, oh, last year they did this and this to me, or last year they did this and this to my family, and for this reason I'm not going to help them now. Or whether it is done out of laziness, like we have the means, we have the time, we have the money, we could be serving those who need our support because they're sick, but out of laziness, we kind of like, we don't want to get involved. So doing this, it means we miss an opportunity to benefit others, and therefore it is considered to be a misdeed that we must stop. Also, we know from the example of Buddha Shakyamuni at his time, he always he went to help those who were sick, irrespective of their position in society, low or high, and always talked about, gave advice on medicine, on healing, and offered support to the sick. Now, after 36, that is about failing to serve the sick, we see number 37, not removing others' suffering. So this actually involves, let's say, 7 different categories. These are not the sick, but there are other categories that need support. So we have the blind, the deaf, those who are lacking limbs of their body, those who are really exhausted from traveling, those who are afflicted by the 5 obscurations. We mentioned the 5 types of obscurations in last class. Those who are afflicted by thoughts of harm and so forth, other types of afflictions, and those who are belittled by others. So all these these groups of people are people who need to hear nice words, they need to be encouraged, they need to be talked to in a very gentle way. So failing to talk to them in a way that helps them overcome the suffering due to the limitations or the suffering, the tiredness that they have and so forth, is stopping us from gathering virtue. If we talk to them in a way that encourages them and helps them, then we accumulate virtue. Okay, we come to the next one, number 38, saying not showing those who are careless what is suitable. So those who are careless, who do not understand what is suitable, are those who, for example, think that I will practice ethics with the ultimate goal of obtaining, good health, a good life, happiness in this life, wealth in this life. Or again, in the future, if I practice ethics in this life, that will bring me happiness and prosperity in the future lives. Actually, this is thinking of maintaining morality, but it's thinking about it for the wrong reason. The reason why we want to maintain morality is because we want to achieve the state of omniscience. So this is the right motivation. We don't maintain morality because we hope to become rich and famous and good looking and so forth. Right. So it says here that if a bodhisattva, out of anger or out of laziness, does not explain those things properly to those who are, who are careless about what is suitable, and if those people are otherwise free of fault, and if it is free of fault to give this explanation, then the bodhisattva should give it. If they fail to give it out of anger or laziness, then a misdeed occurs. Number 39, not repaying the kindness shown to you out of a vindictive mind or out of laziness. So when others have shown great kindness to you, it is appropriate that respond with kindness and you recognize and repay that kindness. The prime example is the example of our parents. So just consider how your mother carried you through the 9 months of pregnancy, and then right after your birth, for many years, both your parents provided everything for you. So they have been extremely kind to you, and therefore it is important to respond with kindness. So just the parents are maybe the prime example of kindness and support we have received, but obviously this includes all those who have been kind to us. Number 40 is noticing others' distress out of a vindictive mind or out of laziness. And here the distress is described as, for example, people who lose their wealth, they lose their possession, or people who find themselves in a dire situation, such as, for example, in conflict, in war, or they are affected by an earthquake or a big fire or a tornado or some calamity. So when people find themselves in distress, it is important for the bodhisattvas to begin thinking, how can I benefit those people? How can I support them? What are the ways of easing their distress? So failing to do this out of vindictiveness or laziness, a downfall, or not a downfall, a misdeed will occur. Okay, we come to the next one, 41, not giving wealth to those who deserve it. And it is described that, for example, when a bodhisattva meets someone who suffers from hunger, thirst, and so forth, and they are requesting support, they are asking for some food, for some water, and something like this. If the bodhisattva refuses to give them anything with a vindictive mind or out of laziness, then the misdeed of not giving to those who deserve it will occur. We had a similar situation in the root downfalls, which is not giving wealth or the Dharma, but there for the root downfall to occur, the motivation had to be miserliness. Whilst here the motivation is different, is a vindictive attitude or laziness. So we see that the type of thinking, there is definitely a gradation in terms of the motivation. Some mental attitudes make the activity heavier, and other mental attitudes, they make it lighter. So we need to understand here that if we give, even if we give a small amount to those who request our help, if we do it with the right motivation, we can accumulate a vast amount of virtue. But of course, we always have to make the differentiation between those who are really worth it, who genuinely are hungry or thirsty or poor and are requesting for our help, and those who are requesting because they have great sense of desire or they are not contented with what they have, they're not satisfied with what they have. Everybody who has gone to India, I'm sure would have experienced both cases. So there was the case of an old lady who requested a bodhisattva for Dharma teachings, and out of laziness, he didn't give these teachings. As a result of this, he was then reborn as a spirit whose throat is tied up in a knot. And when we make special pujas, we try to offer something to that particular spirit. It is very difficult for anything to go, for them to accept any food, for the food to go down their throat, because the throat is restricted by this knot. And that is an indication of what can be the results of refusing out of laziness to give. The next one, number 42, not ensuring the welfare of your following. So as we said, a bodhisattva is someone who will teach Dharma and will gather many disciples. And once you gather disciples and you have those students, those who follow you, you actually have to provide for them. And therefore, the bodhisattva, in order to provide for his or her followers, so that they can give teachings to them and so forth, they have to engage in different activities for securing finances, resources, and so forth to support the disciples. So failing to be active in this way securing finances or securing means, provisions for the disciples, out of laziness or a vindictive mind is considered a misdeed. We come to number 43, not adjusting to others' thinking. So we talk about a bodhisattva here who wishes to establish the benefit of others in the broadest possible way. They need to engage in the ethics of helping others. And in order to do this, they have to modify their behavior according to the needs, the predispositions, the likings of those they seek to benefit. The prime example of this is our teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. Buddha Shakyamuni did not just teach the same teaching to everyone. So Buddha Shakyamuni taught according to the mental predispositions, the capacities, the wishes of those to be trained. So according to the needs of the audience, sometimes he talked about the existence of the self, sometimes he talked about the non-existence of the self, and so forth. Similarly, the bodhisattva, in order to bring about the benefit, the maximum benefit of others, has to be very skillful and very adaptable and, and act in a way that is in accordance with those who receive help. The next one, number 44, not praising good qualities of others and not congratulating, again, out of a vindictive mind or out of laziness. When the bodhisattva sees someone who has good qualities, then it is appropriate for the bodhisattva to praise that person. And when an activity is well done, again, it is important to give congratulations and say, well done. We even see that at the end of the Heart Sutra, the Buddha congratulates the two bodhisattvas who hold the conversation during the sutra, and he says, well done, twice he gives congratulations at the end, because this is a recognition of an activity that was performed properly. It is very important for us to pay attention to this, because our tendency is not to see good qualities in others. Very readily, very easily, we recognize mistakes and then we dwell on these mistakes, and therefore we find little reason or opportunity to praise or to congratulate others. Therefore, we should try to do the opposite. We should try to discover their qualities. We should look carefully. We should dig for qualities. And when we find qualities in others, we should rejoice and say, look at this person, they have such and such quality. And many times we lack this quality, right? So we should also make the comparison that they have this quality, how wonderful that it is that they have it, whilst I don't have the quality, and I'm left behind in this area. It is very important to have this attitude in society when we engage, well, obviously in everyday activities, but also when we engage in large gatherings, we interact with many people. So that we should always look for the good qualities and opportunities to congratulate rather than criticize faults. Number 45, not taking corrective actions when the situation demands it. So as a bodhisattva is trying to benefit others and give teachings to others, it is possible that some amongst the audience behave in a negative way. In a sense, this should not come as a surprise. We keep taking rebirth over and over in samsara due to the power of karma and afflictions for countless of eons. And therefore, afflictions are very strong in our minds. When afflictions are strong in our minds, they make us behave in obnoxious manner. And it is appropriate for the bodhisattva to apply the bodhisattvas would be very skillful. Sometimes they use peaceful means to pacify the disciples, and sometimes they will have to use wrathful means. So here our commentary says that out of afflictions or out of laziness if the bodhisattva does not act in a way to, number one, deflate those who have very high opinion of themselves. And this in particular refers to people who engage in negative activities and they rejoice in that negativity. So the bodhisattva has to use wrathful means to pacify, deflate that type of person. Second, punish, give a punishment. Third, to expel if necessary. So this, and condemn negative behavior. The bodhisattva has to do all this. We know that even Buddha Shakyamuni, when he came into this world, often he used peaceful means to pacify the unruly, but at times he had to assume or to use wrathful means. And that's why, for example, we have the wrathful manifestations of the enlightened activities, such as Yamantaka, who has a terrifying aspect, holds a sword and many different weapons. So this exemplify the wrathful means that Buddha Shakyamuni assumes to pacify those who are misbehaving. And we see, for example, with parents, sometimes they will, sometimes with the carrot, sometimes with the stick, right? So sometimes with chocolate, giving chocolate to the kids, sometimes they give punishment. The last one, the 46, is not repressing wrongdoers, etc. by, it says here, paranormal powers. So it's actually what we usually translate as miraculous powers. Our commentary does not really explain this point. It just says not using miraculous powers or different other powers to terrify or discipline those who are misbehaving. So we understand that the bodhisattvas will have to employ all types of different means in order to prepare disciples and benefit sentient beings. And if they have miraculous powers, there are situations where they must use them. So avoiding to use them when the occasion demands it or when it is necessary, then they will incur a misdeed. So as we know here, we often take the Bodhisattva vows, and also in the context of a tantric initiation, we take Bodhisattva and tantric vows. When we take vows in this context, it's very important that we try the best that we can in this life to maintain the vows. So we try not to cause any decline or cause anything to negatively affect our vows. In the case of the Bodhisattva vows, first of all, we presented the 18 root downfalls. And we said that for a root downfall to occur, all 4 binding factors must be present, with the exception of the 9th and the 18th. The 9th was holding wrong views, and the 18th was forsaking the mind of enlightenment. For these two, a downfall can occur. A downfall occurs as soon as you develop these type of thoughts, even irrespective of whether the 4 binding factors are there. For the other 16, for a root downfall to occur, all 4 binding factors must be present. So not considering the activity to be negative, not wishing to abstain in the future, but rather having the wish to repeat it, taking pleasure in the activity and delighting in it, and having no sense of shame or embarrassment whilst engaging in this activity. When all 4 are present, then a downfall occurs. But if only, let's say, one of those 4 binding factors is present, but the other 3 are not present, although the activity is considered to be a misdeed, it is not counted as a downfall. So this is with regard to this life. Then in terms of the future lives, to make sure that bodhicitta does not, we don't lose the bodhicitta in our future lives. The way that we do this is by avoiding the 4 black deeds and accomplishing the 4 white deeds. Okay, so there was a question, and this is also something that we need to explain. What happens if you take the Bodhisattva vows and your vows decline? How do we restore the vows? Okay, so in terms of restoring the vows, the Bodhisattva vows, okay, so first of all, we must generate the mind of bodhicitta, and then the main method is the method of the relying on the 35 Buddhas for purification. And if also we want to deal with the tantric vows, then we have to engage the Vajrasattva meditation and recitation. Now, with the Bodhisattva vows, first of all, we need to confess. So ideally, you confess in the presence of other bodhisattvas, or you confess in the presence of other beings who also have the Bodhisattva vows, or you confess if that is not suitable or is not applicable, then you confess in the presence of, let's say, a statue or a tanka, imagining that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are present. So the process of purifying through the 35 Buddhas involves, first of all, generating the right type of motivation that you want to purify the negativity, and then performing prostrations whilst reciting the names of the 35 Buddhas. So the story of this, why we rely on this practice of the 35 Buddhas is like this. At the time of the Buddha in Rajgir, close to Bodh Gaya, there was a lady who was selling alcohol. And at that time, the 35 Buddhas, in the aspect of bodhisattvas, would go out daily on alms for begging. And when they arrived at the house of that lady, it just happened that her child died just as the 35 Buddhas arrived in her place. And she linked the two events and went about saying that her child died because those 35 Buddhas or Bodhisattvas arrived in her place. And she actually used quite a lot of derogative words and criticized them quite a lot. As a result, she accumulated a lot of negativity. And later on, the Buddha gave advice of to rely on this practice of the 35 Buddhas in order to purify this negativity. So the other method that we mentioned here is Vajrasattva meditation and recitation. Vajrasattva meditation and recitation is considered to be the supreme method for purifying negativity. The recitation can involve the recitation of the 100-syllable mantra, but also you can do it with the short version of the mantra, Om Vajrasattva Hum. So as long as you employ the 4 opponent powers, it should be complete purification. The other feature of these vows, the Bodhisattva vows, but also the Tantric vows, is that we can take them every day. So at the beginning of the day, start by going for refuge, and then take again your Bodhisattva vows, take again your Tantric vows. This is a very good practice. And when you take them, so we're discussing Bodhisattva vows here. So when you take your Bodhisattva vows, make sure every day you run through the whole list of the 18 root infractions and the 46 secondary misdeeds. If some of them have occurred, make sure you confess and purify properly through the methods that we mentioned. If they have not occurred, if you haven't broken anything on that particular day, then rejoice that these haven't happened. And in any case, make the promise that tomorrow also I will try likewise. I will try not to engage in any misdeed or negativity in relation to my Bodhisattva vows. If you have kept them properly, again, tomorrow I will try to keep them properly, and so forth. So this type of daily retaking of the vows strengthens the vows. Take them and purify, and take them and purify daily. So it's also very good to understand the benefits of taking the Bodhisattva vows. So the benefits is they always are presented in terms of temporary and ultimate benefits. So in terms of temporary benefits is that you will stop the negativity that can bring about rebirths in the lower migrations. You create the causes so that in the future you can directly meet the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and also you have peace of mind because you're acting in a